for telling my boyfriend that he can't date younger and then get upset about my budget apartment? Update. Original story. So, I recently got together with a guy from my hobby. He asked me out first, and I had some doubts that we'd work together as a couple because of the age difference. He's 35 and I'm 22. So in my apartment, since it's an old house that was originally a single family house, there isn't much soundproofing and the floors squeak when people move. I've gotten used to the sound of the guy upstairs getting up at 4 in the morning since he starts work at 5. And the sound of the girls in the apartments to either side of mine watching telenovels till midnight, taking work calls all day, and having friends over on weekend nights. I know when I play music or have friends over, some of the sound leaks through the walls, so I'd never get upset about hearing my neighbors because it goes both ways. So, when my boyfriend started coming over more often, he had complaints about the neighbors, which put me in an awkward place. He wanted to go speak to them or have me text them, and I said no. For example, one of the early times that he stayed over, when we went to bed around 10, he wanted me to ask my neighbor to turn down her TV. I said she didn't have it that loud, and she turns it off at midnight anyway. At 4 a.m., he got very irritated with my upstairs neighbor getting up and cooking breakfast. I said that he would be done by 5 because that's when his shift starts. At 7 a.m., he was still trying to sleep in, and the neighbor on the other side had some work calls that he said he couldn't sleep through. I offered him earplugs, and he said he couldn't sleep with them in either. He wanted me to ask her to quiet down. He had similar comments every time he heard someone else in the building just living their lives, especially if it was when he was in bed. I got frustrated with my boyfriend and told him, you can't expect to date a hot 22-year-old and not want to deal with a 20-year-old's living situation. I don't know if you realize, but this is normal apartment for someone my age. Hell, my neighbors are pretty great. Nobody's throwing loud parties on work nights. Nobody's having screaming fights. Nobody's having babies. The hot young part was in sarcastic air quotes because those were his words, not mine. He got irritated and asked why I was bringing age into it, and I said it's because he can't both want someone so young and also want someone without house kind of money. And he was being so out of touch with how normal people in their 20s live. He got really irritated with me bringing age into it, and even more annoyed when I'd respond to his neighbor complaints in the future with, "Okay, boomer," or tell him that if he wanted me to have a rich person apartment, he could pay for it. Am I the asshole for what I said to my boyfriend about my apartment? Edit. A lot of comments are asking if we could stay at his house. It's not possible for me to get to his house on my own because I don't have a car and the buses don't go that far into the suburbs. So that would mean him driving 30 minutes from his house to the suburbs to pick me up, then an extra 30 minutes to drive me to his house, then an hour round trip early in the morning to get me home in time for work. It's a lot easier for him to visit me in the city. Edit 2. A lot of people in the comments are saying technically 35 is a millennial and not a boomer. I know that. I am using boomer as a joke or a figure of speech to say acting out of touch and entitled to tell other people what to do. It is a common figure of speech to say, "Okay, boomer," to someone who is acting entitled regardless of their actual age, and it's more of a mindset thing. Now for the top comments before reading the update. I don't know, man. I think your initial instinct that this wouldn't work out was right, but for more reasons than just the age. He seems to have a very low tolerance for mild inconveniences. Not the asshole. Yeah, as someone in their 30s who still likes apartment living, I get the impression that this dude wants a level of soundproofing that isn't possible, period. If you can hear people taking work calls, watching TV, and making breakfast, the soundproofing is just bad. I empathize with him because I hated apartment living. I felt like I could never live my life because I'd be a bother to my neighbors. And conversely, I would get annoyed at my neighbors when the fault really lies with the shitty landlords that build these buildings as cheap as possible and give not a single fuck about sound control between units. I only just moved into a house last year, late 30s, married, 2 kids, because we loved our apartment living so freaking much. But I'm convinced a big reason it was so great was because our complex was built in the 70s, and I could rarely hear the people above or next to us. It was much more likely to hear the neighbors through a closed window than through the walls. New builds are such an absolute dog shit. I lived in a concrete high-rise built in 2009 that had great soundproofing. Now we live in an average 3 flat and the soundproofing is only okay. We can hear the booms and musics of the neighbor's TV, but not the details. I don't miss living on the 39th floor, nor do I miss knowing that if I screamed, no one would hear me. Okay, the screaming thing is kind of scary. I'm pretty sure my neighbors would have heard me scream since when my neighbor were both sitting on the couches that were both against the shared wall, I would sometimes hear him if he laughed loudly, then text him asking what was so funny. And now for the little update. I googled this property records, and for his house, he co-owns it with a woman who shares his last name. Holy shit! I don't know if she's his wife or ex-wife or what, but I'm out of here. I honestly am freaking out right now because I just gotta say, great big thank you to everyone who noticed red flags and made me question that. I've blocked his number. He can have fun figuring out where I went. Next story. Am I the asshole for calling my fiance delusional for wanting me to let his mom pick my makeup look for the wedding? My fiance and I are getting married. He comes from a conservative family and his mom has been up into the wedding planning, posing as supervisor to oversee and catch and eliminate anything that could be seen as offensive. After the wedding dress fiasco, I was told to get a dress that wasn't showing too much skin, came the makeup issue. I showed my fiancé some looks I wanted to choose from, and he gasped and said his mom would have a stroke if she saw these. I, in frustration, asked what I should do, and the next thing I knew, but did not expect, was for her to send me looks of models with almost no makeup or light makeup. No eyeshadow, no glowy lipstick, just plain looking. I refused to choose from any of her suggestions, and we had an argument. My fiancé came home and argued about how I'm planning on humiliating him and family at the wedding by wanting to look like a clown and make a joke out of both of us. I snapped, and I called him delusional to think that I'll let his mom get a say in what makeup I should wear since it's my face. He said there's no such thing as mine and yours in a marriage, and that I'm clearly too immature for it. He has been avoiding me a while, saying, "You know why I'm avoiding you," and his mom sent a text about how she has my best interests at heart. Am I the asshole? Last story. Am I the asshole for inserting myself into a married couple's financial life? I'm friends with a married couple, Grace and Michael. Grace and I went out to drink a few days ago, just the two of us. We talked a bit about inflation and finances, and she confessed to me that she barely has any money, and it makes her feel really vulnerable. It turns out they mostly live off her income, and Michael, who makes over 2.5 times as much as Grace, puts almost all of his income into savings. He also asked Grace to transfer any of her bonuses or extra money into that savings account. The problem is that Grace has no access to that account. She told me that she asked for it in the past, but Michael just said she's already access to their shared checking account. That is strictly for their monthly expenses, so it's fine. Grace told me that she feels like she should have access to that account too, or at least have a little extra in her own personal account, so if anything happens to Michael, she doesn't have to wait around months to access the money. She told this to Michael too, but he dismissed her and said nothing will happen to him. I told Grace that this is really not okay and that she should demand access to that account. It's her money too, and it's not right that only Michael has access to it. I was very strong about this and made her promise that she will make Michael give her access to it. She seemed very relieved that I agreed with her and find her concerns more than reasonable. Now on to the problem. Currently, Michael is throwing a fit at me for inserting myself into their financial life, saying it's none of my business. He says that over 85% of the money was put into the savings account by him, and whatever Grace put in there was just to compensate for the things Michael paid for alone in the past. Yes, he is right that it's none of my business, but my close friend came to me saying she feels vulnerable because at 30 years old, she only has about 500 pounds in her name, despite having a well-paying job. Of course, I will tell her that this isn't right and encourage her to stand up for herself. But since I'm friends with Michael too, I don't know. Am I the asshole? Well, that's it for today. If you're enjoying these stories, please like and share your thoughts in the comments section down below. Thank you.